For the past 20 years, Nike was the undisputed king of Chinese sportswear market. For over a decade straight, it ranked #1 in total revenue, consistently beating out Adidas and a whole lineup of local Chinese brands. As a foreign brand, Nike managed to achieve a national popularity that most local companies could only dream of. But recently, it looks like Nike's good old days in China are over. After hitting a record high of $7.3 billion in 2021, Nike China's performance began to slide. By 2025, that number plummeted to $5.7 billion. And its #1 spot has been taken away by a former local underdog called ANTA since 2022. Even worse, Nike has gone almost radio silence on Chinese social media. No viral products, no hot topics, and consequently, no sales momentum. On the other hand, the Chinese sportswear market is more buzzing than ever. On and Hoka are exploding. Lululemon is aggressively expanding. Outdoor brands like Arc'teryx and Salomon are printing money. Even Nike's arch-enemy Adidas is crushing it in fashion scene. So how did Nike become so irrelevant? Well, in business world, your biggest strengths one day could become your biggest weakness. And this is exactly what happened to Nike. Let's dive in. Back in the late 90s, when Nike first dipped its toe into China, they partnered up with a distributor called Top Sports, backed by Bell International. Bell used to control nearly half of women's shoe brands in China's shopping malls. And thanks to that insane real estate leverage, Top Sports practically ruled the sportswear section in most shopping malls in the country. Then in 2001, Nike brought in another distributor called Baoshen International, also known as YY Sports, backed by a global shoe OEM giant who made almost 20% of the sneakers on the planet. In a golden era before e-commerce took off, Top Sports had over 8,000 stores across China, while YY Sports ran more than 5,000. Together, they helped Nike build a successful retail empire in China. Nike focused on branding and high-level strategy, while the distributors used their massive network to push Nike's ads into every single city and made sure all Chinese consumers, whether they're into football, basketball, running, or yoga, became Nike customers. In most consumer markets, you usually start with cheap, entry-level brands, and then work your way up to high-end logos. But here's the bizarre logic in sportswear market. When someone with no fitness background suddenly decides to start working out, they're more likely to buy Nike, because Nike is the most famous one, has everything you need, and it's a safe choice. However, once they graduate from complete newbies to intermediate enthusiasts, they look away from Nike. They want specialized gear. If they get into hiking, they may buy Patagonia. If they take serious running, they may buy Saucony. If they go skiing, they may look for Helly Hansen. Because Nike positioned itself as such a massive catch-all brand, it became the gateway drug for beginners, only to hand over those matured consumers to niche rivals. Just look at how Nike is getting schooled in some of the hottest trends in China right now. In yoga sector, giant logos are out, minimalist aesthetic is in. Nike kept slapping massive logos on everything, while Lululemon destroyed them with sleek, fashionable designs. In outdoor sector, Arc'teryx and Salomon successfully turned technical gear into a trendy urban lifestyle, while Nike's outdoor line ACG is clearly lagging behind. In streetwear sector, Nike overprinted Air Jordan and Dunks until they became uncool and flooded the market. Meanwhile, Adidas turned their classic sneakers into viral, must-have lifestyle pieces. And even in running sector, On and Hoka are aggressively eating Nike's lunch. Now, you may ask, Nike is a multi-billion-dollar beast. Can't they just pivot and crush these niche brands? Well, they want to, but they can't. Their distributor empire is now holding them hostage. Its rising niche brand almost exclusively use direct-to-consumer model, meaning they own their stores, maintain strict price control, and train their staff perfectly. More importantly, they run active WeChat communities and offline clubs. They know exactly what the young consumers are into the second a new trend pops up. But Nike is insulated by its distributors. They can't see real-time data, they don't hear direct consumer feedback, and they suffer from unauthorized price slashing and massive store management by third parties. Nike has to rely on the distributors to fight every local battle. So has Nike ever thought about cutting out the middleman and going fully direct? Of course they have, but it's way harder than you thought. Over the past few years, Nike underwent an aggressive restructuring in the US market. They cut back on their distributors, even stabbing their long-lasting allies like Foot Locker in the back, all to push their own D2C channels. The result? Retail partners revolted, and Nike's global revenue took a massive hit. Things got so bad that Nike had to replace its global CEO and go back to playing nice with distributors just to stabilize their financials. With that painful lesson fresh in mind, Nike is now even more terrified of losing its distributors in China. In fact, last year, their global CEO Elliott Hill had to explicitly emphasize that Nike must stand shoulder to shoulder with these two giant partners in China. Of course, Nike is still trying to adapt. Instead of cutting distributors off, Nike is doubling down on its partnership with them. For example, sharing member data, handing over flagship stores to Top Sports, trying to create a kind of direct-to-consumer experience without actually owning the stores. But it feels more like a defensive retreat. While facing rivals that are incredibly agile and aggressive, any hesitation or conservatism can be fatal. And one thing is clear for Nike China: the days of easy money are officially over. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Chinese consumer market, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. This could really help the channel grow. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Adrian Pong, and I will see you in the next one.